Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be looking in from today, coming in from video or here personally. We want to welcome you to the Sustainability Spotlight panel. I'm Joyce Landry, and I'm the president and co-founder of Landry and Kling Special Events. And we are actually celebrating our 40th anniversary next year. So we've been around the industry for quite a while. And a lot of people know us for the events and the meetings and conferences and the influence we had in the industry on that side. But what not a lot of people realize is that during COVID, we started a platform called sustainableships.com. And that was a way for us to kind of marry the cruise industry into personal interest of ours, which is sustainability and the environment. So I'm very happy to be involved in sustainability in a pretty big way. It's also going to be a mouthpiece for the industry to talk about sustainability. So we have a very illustrious group of panelists today who are involved in sustainability. There's a lot of panels that have taken place during this Sea Trade conference on this subject matter. And we wanted to do a little twist on it. So we're going to be discussing sustainable operating practices, managed tourism, stewardship, the passenger experience, and nurturing the places that we visit. So yes, we'll be talking a little bit about technology and how technology is influencing this, but it really is going to be a holistic view on how is sustainability actually shifting the cruise industry and where is the cruise industry heading in the future in regards to sustainability. So I'd like to introduce right now our panelists, and if I spent a lot of time reading their bios, we wouldn't even get to any questions today. So you can really take your time and read their bios on the app, and I'll just give you just a little brief thumbnail here so you know who we're speaking with. And the first right here, excuse me. So we have Sylvia Garrigo, and Sylvia is with Royal Caribbean Group. Sylvia is currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Environmental, Social, and Governance Officer, and she oversees this entire company's strategy for environment, social, and governance. Her previous experience is with executive and senior legal positions at Millicom International and Chevron Corporation, where she also led corporate responsibility, global issue, and public policy teams. So I just want to really welcome Sylvia because this is something very interesting. I think the background being in the energy sector coming into the cruise industry is something that brings a very, very interesting perspective here. And then we have Grant Holmes. Grant Holmes is here with Inchcape Shipping Services, and he is visiting us from Dubai, where he spearheads Global Cruise Solutions team overseeing 10,000 cruise calls a year. And I know one of the things that Grant's working on now are consulting projects around the globe to open up new cruise ports and work with different port infrastructure to try to make more sustainable ports available to the cruise industry. He has a very interesting background, starting with shipbuilding in a dockyard in Portsmouth, England. And from Festival Cruise Lines in the year 2000 to Inchcape today, has had leadership positions throughout the organization. And I want to welcome you to our panel today. And then we have online Lyndon Kopel. Lyndon, are you there?
I am. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you. I can see you. Welcome. And Lyndon's coming to us from Geneva today. And Lyndon is Director of Sustainability for MSC Cruises. And she aims to ensure that MSC grows in a sustainable way, which is a really big job, given how fast that cruise line is growing. She has a solid background in environmental protection and sustainability with experience both as a consultant and in the corporate environment. Now, Lyndon's background is in the airline industry with Cathay Pacific and Etihad Airways. So we have Lyndon with the airline industry, and we have Sylvia with the energy industry, and now we're all in the cruise industry together. So this should be an interesting conversation about how sustainability and their background, their interest level really flows with what's happening in the industry today and how they're going to change it. So the first question that I would like to say is, and I'm going to send this to you, Lyndon, because you hold these significant positions right now, which are sustainability and environmental governance within your company, specifically in this subject matter. That means that for the two largest cruise lines in the world, there must be a commitment, a dedication that's being put towards sustainability right now. And can you explain, what that means to you, what that means to your company, and how does that affect your operations? So we'll start that with Lyndon.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that sustainability is gaining much more momentum. We see and hear about the importance of sustainability in business in our everyday lives very frequently now, and it's a fundamental aspect of business resilience. In that respect, I mean, my role is to set the direction, to facilitate, to ensure broad engagement across the entire business, ensure collaboration and external partnership, and ensuring that we drive solutions rather than wait for them to happen. We've got a strong governance structure to help support that. We've got a executive director-led sustainability advisory board, and that enables us to track the actions, the KPIs, ensuring that we set responsibilities, we track progress, and we've recently set ourselves this net zero emissions 2050 goal, which is really important to us as a kind of step forward and a real commitment. And for that, we now even have a specific executive committee on decarbonisation, again led by the executive director. So we can really see that this, it's so important to get the senior management involved in this, and we can really see that kind of input and drive there to enable these kind of actions to happen. We know this isn't going to be an easy journey, but we're seeing a much more kind of positive approach to this, moving from some of these issues are just too hard and unattainable to we've got to do this, we've got to get on with it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And Sylvia, I'll ask you the same question. I mean, you are taking a big role here in this area with your company. So what does Royal Caribbean, how are they going to benefit by this?
Well, Joyce, as you know, I'm a newbie. So I think I have like a little over 2 months with the Royal Caribbean Group, and I'm really delighted. I joined Royal Caribbean for many, many reasons. But I think what I was particularly struck with was how deeply and extensively sustainability is embedded within our business throughout the entire operation. It's a core aspect of our business and business strategy, from global marine operations to shipbuilding to sustainable sourcing, from the aluminum that we acquire to build our ships to the bananas that we serve on our ships. And so it's quite a huge footprint that we need to cover. And that footprint requires a very deep and authentic commitment to sustainability, which was another thing that I was very impressed with in the Royal Caribbean Group. There is a saying, as we all know, that sustainability is going above and beyond compliance. At the Royal Caribbean Group, I think the way we operationalize that is by going above and beyond the call of duty. And I think that's the type of commitment and passion that fuels progress in sustainability. And that's really the business model for our times. And there's no better time than today than to operationalize that business model because of the challenges that we face, from climate to human capital to fires and all these different challenges. And we have great lessons that we can draw from, right? We have just seen how the entire world, experts, companies, scientists, governments, etc., have galvanized around to fight one common enemy. I don't think that we've ever, in the history of our modern civilization, have had one global common enemy. But it took the collaboration and innovation of all of those sectors to face those challenges. Well, that's the same kind of collaboration and innovation that we need today to meet the challenges that we have. And like Lyndon, we have the support, the integration, embeddedness, but we also have the governance from our board to our executive committees and extended throughout the organization to achieve that.
You know, for me, it's very heartwarming because having been in the industry for almost 40 years, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, and I think that part of you know what I have struggled with over the years is that my environmental tendencies have been somewhat at odds. You know, with the cruise industry, especially in the beginning, because it wasn't always that way. I mean, we were really focused on doing other things, and the environment was sort of secondary. We had to grow, we had to open up ports, and so on. And I think that we're now coming full circle to actually heal a lot of the hurts that happened before. That feels to me where we are. And to that point, I wanted to shift over now to the land side, because you've discussed now from the ship side a bit. The ports have a lot to do with it. I mean, these ships going into the ports, I think you and I talked the other day, Grant, about congestion in ports, and you know, how are we going to go forward in the future to be able to avoid that and grow and be sustainable, and is that all possible, and how do we do that with the ports?
Well, on the face of it, it seems like a massive challenge. But if you look at the maths and the geography, it's not such a challenge. There are about 434 cruise ships on the planet. And every year we're going to have roughly about 20 more. At Inchcape, we have a site. We spent $9 million to create a site called World of Ports. And there we have 4,500 ports registered. All the environmental data, all the berthing and technical data is there. But that's 4,500 ports. If you include harbors, some of which cruise lines are going to, destinations, we could be into the tens of thousands. And I moderated a session for CLIA. It was 2 years ago, and to determine what were the main challenges of today and tomorrow. And the top 3 challenges after 1 hour we came up with were port congestion, environmental regulation, and government regulation. Those were the 3. Let's take port congestion. I thought about this a lot. And I then had a follow-up session in Hamburg, and I proposed to all the cruise lines that if there's more than 4,500 ports, and there's tens of thousands, and you take somewhere like Indonesia, you have 2,000 ports, and they have 400,000 passengers. That's half of one port in the Mediterranean would have in a year. And you take the Vanilla Islands, and there's so many other areas in the world. There's 75 islands in the South Aegean, for example, that are Greek.
Actually, could you mention that? Because you told me recently that you spent 30 days and 30 islands in the Aegean.
Yes, for the Prime Minister and the Governor, I had to meet with the mayors of 30 islands in 30 days on sustainability projects. And some islands are going completely electric. You know, and this is really exciting to see, and they want to build cruise in a sustainable way. And so, to cut a long story short, what we've decided, you know, and I'm helping about 20 countries around the world to do this, is I propose to the cruise lines, you don't have a port congestion problem, you have a deployment problem, because there are plenty of places to go. The challenge is, can those places receive cruise ships sustainably? So what we need to do is we need to look at every destination and find out its finite capacity limits in terms of people, because the buzzword now is human sustainability. You know, and people in terms of over-tourism, drain on resources. So we need to find out how many buses there are, what about the circulation of the transport, how does it impact the city, you know, how will it impact the attraction sites? Will there be too many people there? How many tourist guides are there? How do we manage this entire operation and look at everything from a 365 perspective? So we need to put a finite capacity limit on every port in terms of passengers and vessels. And then we need to manage that sustainably. And then we need to open up more ports, and we need to have more dialogue when we develop itineraries. So we're alone at Inchcape, we're hoping to put 50 new destinations on the map. And most cruise lines are using up to max 800. At Inchcape, we serve 800 ports. So I think there's a lot of scope, and we just have to think outside the box, and we need to be realistic with the capacity expectations and educate the destinations to develop it in a sustainable way.
I actually had a chance to experience that very recently. I just got back from Greece and I was on one of your ships, Sylvia, well, your product, Silver Moon, and we went to ports I hadn't been to before, which I can't believe in 40 years. So I went to Syros and Patmos and Paros, and it was extraordinary, really. It was almost like going back to cruising the first time I ever went cruising in the 1970s, you know, seeing a place for the first time and having it be a real expedition experience and cultural experience. It was really great. So I hope we do more of that.
Sure.
So, sorry, can I also ask on the cruise line side, Sylvia and or Lyndon, to sort of step in here and say, is there anything you're doing now, you know, with your port, either deployment or the way you're looking at ports or the way you're handling excursions on board that start to get into this?
We're certainly looking at our deployment and ensuring that we have an organized and respectful way of entering into these ports, especially given you know, the issues of over-tourism and the impacts of over-tourism. And one of the things that we're very proud of what we're doing is the work that we're doing with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. We worked with them for quite a bit to establish a framework and a whole set of standards to certify tour operators on how to manage their work in a manner that is respectful to the communities, that is respectful to the socioeconomic impacts and opportunities that exist in those communities, as well as the social and cultural and historical heritages of these communities. Our goal was ambitious. We thought when we first set them at 1,000, we thought we'd never make 1,000, and the program gained so much traction that we were able to exceed that goal by certifying 2,000 tours with over 33 tour operators and in more than 29 countries. And this is essential. I mean, we really need to, you know, it's a different paradigm. We can't necessarily go back to the experience that you had in the 1970s, right? But we can certainly do it right and not grow for growth purposes, but grow in a sustainable manner, in a respectful manner, and work with the ecosystem of actors, you know, governments, destination managers, hotels, cruise industries. You know, we often say we're not competing on protecting the environment. We're all in this together. So important to work together, but it's also important to have standards that we could, you know, publish and apply and operationalize with the ecosystem of actors.
Yeah, thank you. And Lyndon, I think you had mentioned to me when we were preparing for this that you're also looking at educating the passenger and about things like animal welfare on your tours and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important aspect to try as far as possible to incorporate education into tours. You know, we have a range of tours now called Protect Tours, where there's specifically a kind of strong environmental element to them. So as well as looking at tours in general, and you know, we're also encouraging our tour operators to be GSTC certified or at least engaged in that process, providing kind of training courses. And but you know, our tour, I think one thing I want to mention is that our tour operators are really kind of our eyes and ears on the ground in terms of what opportunities there are for places to visit and help to kind of decentralize the kind of activities that we go on. And we rely on them to a great extent, and we encourage them to incorporate sustainability messages. You know, there's things that we can do on the ship, but I think more importantly is once they get to that destination, working with our tour operators to make sure that they're going to places, are doing it in a responsible way, and that they then incorporate that within the narrative on the actual tours themselves.
Thank you. Actually, when I mentioned the animal welfare, I was also thinking about stopping things like dolphin encounters that are cruel to the animals, or any other type of, you know, we've all, you know, seen excursions that we've kind of wondered whether it's the right thing to do with elephants and monkeys and things like that. There are ways that we can, you know, create different types of experiences that don't have to, you know, be the wrong thing to do. They're doing the right thing, I guess. I'd like to actually, I'm looking at the time here, move off of the short portion of this. And although there are some ports that are doing really the right thing, I mean, if anyone has been to the Galapagos, you know that the limitation of the number of ships that can go in there is an automatic sustainable factor, as well as Alaska in certain areas. You know, like Glacier Bay is limited. So if we tried to limit, that might be a way to, it might be painful at first, but it would be a way to start to bring back the environmental consistencies. I'd like to go to the sort of the purchasing. So the food and purchasing, and how are we sustainably, bringing on products, and what are we doing on board the ships right now that that are sustainable?
Sure. Well, coming from the extractive industry, I was very, very happy to see that the Royal Caribbean Group has a very responsible program for extracting our food from the ocean. We know that that's a huge problem. Overfishing is a huge, huge problem, not only for the oceans and their biodiversity, but for a lot of people that depend on fishing for their livelihood as well as for their food. So when we have massive orders from huge companies like ours, we want to make sure that those massive orders are directed to responsible suppliers. So we're working very closely with our suppliers and going to the source of fisheries, whether they're farmed or wild-caught fish. We've set a goal to source 90% of wild-caught fish from sustainable sources, and we'll do more as soon as we get there. And we're sourcing 75% of farm fish from sustainable sources that are certified by MSC and ASC. And that's—
And you mark those on the menu so people know about this?
Absolutely, absolutely. But you mentioned, being bringing this, and that's an important point. How do you get people to really appreciate how they're contributing to a sustainable ocean? And it's not just putting videos on our ships or on having them watch programs on National Geographic. It's bringing them with our tour operators, with our people, with our crew, and bringing them not only into pristine ecosystems like the Galapagos and saying, this is so pristine, you have to be careful. That applies everywhere we go. Everywhere we go is our environmental home. Even in Miami, there are things that we need to be doing to protect our oceans and our ecosystems. So it's not just, of course, it's inspirational to go to Galapagos or to go to the Arctics or to go to, to Alaska and see these beautiful animals that we're impacting if we don't act responsibly. But we need to take that everywhere we are and everywhere we go.
To that point, one of the things that concerns us is the mask problem. We're all coming back into cruising, and there will be disposable masks on board. There will be the opportunity, or the threat actually, for them to fall into the ocean, to blow off of the top decks and so on. So what we're doing as sustainable ships is we've created a little mask holder so that it holds it onto your body. So I just wanted to share with everybody at the end of this program to come up here. I've got complimentary ones for you also if you get them at the door. But it was our own way to contribute to try to keep the masks out of the water, because that, I think, is going to be a growing problem as we all cope with COVID going forward and coming back into cruising.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, Lyndon, is there anything you want to discuss about the products, sourcing, sustainable sourcing on your vessels?
Yeah, I mean, we remain committed to our kind of policy of what we call local as first choice. Of course, to make sure that we give that opportunity to eat kind of the local produce, to ensure that it's fresh, but also for non-perishable items to make sure that we support local producers and providers. And also it helps at a broader level to minimise the transport of items around the world unnecessarily. So, that's also a positive in terms of making sure that we're acting responsibly. We're supporting local producers local providers, while also making sure that we're not unnecessarily taking items from halfway around the world, you know. So I think that's really one of the main things we're doing, and also with the fish, also Marine Stewardship Council, you know, MSC, but different MSC. Certified fish products is important for us. I think about 450,000 tons of cod and hake that we purchased in 2019. That's the kind of latest kind of real record we've got. Were certified to MSC. So, and we plan to get back on track with that, and plan to go much deeper on other items as well to kind of drive that on our kind of procurement agenda.
And this is a serious issue. I mean, as you pointed out, Sylvia, we probably in our lifetimes are going to see the end of tuna if we don't do something about it, because it just can't keep going on this way. You know, it's not farmable, it's not sustainable, and you know, so in choosing the right fish that we eat, I think that will go a long way toward preserving some of this. Talking about stewardship, ocean sustainability, and even we'll get into a little bit sustainable shore excursions, but you mentioned the Marine Stewardship Council. That also means that you're producing your own water, you're limiting emissions, you're eliminating ocean dumping. You know, how far are we going here in trying to mitigate, you know, some of the issues of the past? Either one of you. No.
No, I hate the word dumping. It just doesn't exist. It's not part of our,
good. That's a good point. Talk about that.
It's not part of our DNA, and it should never be considered as an option. We have, as well as others in the industry, are working very hard on waste treatment systems. Our ships are built to be 100% landfill free. And we do a lot of things with waste, converting it into energy, and doing things that not only just incinerate it, but put it to a useful use. By the same token, we produce 90% of our own water through desalinization and osmosis processes, so that we don't compete with local water sources. And we also work very hard on our decarbonization strategy. We set a goal to achieve a target of reduction of 35%, and made that, and now set an additional goal of reducing our emissions by 25% by 2025. In addition to that, we have a wind farm in Kansas that will offset 12% of our emissions. There's a lot of work to be done there. We are in a hard-to-abate industry. Again, it's an area where we shouldn't be competing. We should be collaborating and innovating together, and finding solutions with fuel suppliers, and with shipbuilding companies, to make sure that we prepare our fleet for the transitions that are coming. Not only all the physical transitions, but all the transitions that are needed to operate and work from, like what we're doing now on LNG fueled ships to renewable fuel ships. So we have to make sure that we are building and designing for the future.
It's a very good point, though, about what you said about the ships being, I think there could be a misinformation of what people think cruise ships do to the ocean. And I've had this debate with people here in Miami who all ride around in private craft and are tossing things over the side all of the time. I mean, I've done a lot of ocean cleanup here with different groups in Miami, and it's really shameful. So I think the cruise industry actually is way ahead of the private boating industry as far as cleanliness and being held to task for that, which is really what needs to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lyndon, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate really what Sylvia said, I mean, the whole waste management is such an important aspect. You know, we have teams of people on board whose sole role is to manage, segregate, make sure that those items are kept segregated, that they're recycled. We we communicate those messages to our guests. You know, we talk about how responsible we are in terms of recycling. So we provide bins in their room that allow them to segregate within the cabins. You know, so we do get our kind of guests involved in that by encouraging them also to segregate. And then, yeah, I mean, one of the other points I'd like to mention is there's all the things that we've got on the ship, and every new ship we get, it's better designed. It's more efficient. We're making a huge effort when it comes to efficiency. We need to look at these long-term absolute reductions, which will come through new technologies, new zero emissions fuel, but also we shouldn't forget the importance of being much more efficient in the way that we operate our ships, looking at itinerary optimization, looking at the way that we manage our heating, ventilation and cooling systems. We do an activity called a digital twin ship, where we're effectively able to track the onboard performance by transferring a lot of that data from on the ship back to a digital twin, which has the optimal operational performance, and comparing those two and enabling the crew to tweak the operations of the ship, but also allowing another set of eyes from onshore. So there's a lot of activity there going on, and that's really enabled us to be very active in terms of meeting our energy efficiency goals. And then the final point is maybe about collaboration. I mean, we cannot do any of this without partnership and collaboration. We have now, I think we've turned a corner, as I mentioned earlier, from being very hesitant and kind of reactive, waiting for solutions to come to us. We're an end user, we'll have to wait for this technology, we'll have to wait for the fuel. No, we've got to help drive it. We've got to be there. We've got to have a front seat in this discussion. We've got to be there in the partnerships, in these R&D projects, everything. We're an important player here, and I've really seen that we are genuinely much more positive now about seeing a kind of zero emissions future. I think that we really couldn't envision before.
What you said, creating itineraries that actually help the fuel consumption, it'd be very much like flying less, like I think a lot of us could do, and we've learned during COVID that we don't need to fly nearly as much as we did before. So in the same way, the ships having shorter places to go from point A to point B, like the Aegean cruise that I just came off of.
Yeah.
I think there was one night that we didn't go further than 100 nautical miles just to go from one port to the next, so we hardly used any fuel in that movement, yet we were in a completely different environment when we woke up in the morning. So regarding the ports and their sustainability, I mean, what are you seeing as trends? Are we doing electric vehicles, electric buses? I mean, what's going on in the ports?
Well, there's 5 major initiatives that we're trying to put out in the South Aegean, Vanilla Islands, and across the Middle East. The first one is the GSTC certification, which has already been articulated. Both MSC and Royal Caribbean have made great strides in that area. I mean, 2,000 tours is really encouraging. But then the destination also has to be GSTC certified, and that comes from a destination perspective. So we want to encourage that. Back in 2006, I created a tourist guide training course called Cruise Guide Training, to educate the guiding techniques and skills for tourist guides, and the World Federation of Tourist Guide Associations ratified this. I want to now develop another element to that training, which will be sustainability, because the tourist guides should be trained on sustainability in a very effective way, and then they are the ambassadors of their destination. They're the ambassadors of their islands and their locations, and they can communicate the initiatives that are happening locally and how the tour has been designed in a sustainable way. And the important factors that lead to sustainability. So that I think is an important initiative we want to take forward. Then regarding the mode of transportation, initially we were looking at the most sustainable form of transport and how far the mode of transport goes. In the South Aegean, I'm very encouraged to say that they've already started purchasing electric vehicles, in large buses as well, of 50 seaters, and some coasters of 22. And in the new project, we are trying to go all the way electric, and some islands will be entirely electric, and some tours, for example, will be a tour on a golf buggy. And then, as you alluded to, Joyce, the itineraries need to have lower distances, low mileage itineraries. And this is, before in the South Aegean, there are officially 75 islands. And you've got two groups of islands, Dodecanese and the Cyclades. But what we want to do is have a new home port. So the home port is in the South Aegean already. That means less distance. And then we're developing multiple itineraries for different types of cruise lines. So there'll be certain islands that will be only dedicated towards luxury or niche type ships that are smaller and only one ship per day. Other islands will be marquee ports, and those ports will be able to handle larger vessels in a sustainable way and be able to handle more calls. And then there'll be discovery ship itineraries. So we're going to create a matrix of these itineraries, but all of them will be low mileage itineraries. So this will help tremendously with sustainability. Also in Dubai, we are developing a new private island destination in order to, again, arrange low mileage itineraries. And I don't know if you've all heard of the world's islands. You probably know the Palm Island, and next to that is the World Islands. On there, we'll be developing a private island destination, but it's also close to Port Rashid. And what we did in Dubai, when we had 1 million visitors in 2019, the port was getting a little congested. So now we have a second port in Dubai to spread the ships out. And we've opened new berths to separate where the ships are and manage the flow of the people in a much more sustainable way. And these types of initiatives are making a big difference. And I think that moving forward, we can see more of this in other regions of the world. The Vanilla Islands we've been working on as well, in exactly the same way.
You might need to say where those are.
The Vanilla Islands, for everybody, is a marketing initiative for 6 countries and 12 ports. Those countries are the Seychelles, Mauritius, Reunion Island, Madagascar, Comoros, and Mayotte. And all the ports and all the tourism boards got together, and I was consulting them. We developed a sustainable cruise tourism strategy to enable sustainable cruising and to ensure that we did not damage the integrity of the destinations. And this also included the wildlife. You take places like Madagascar, 90% of all the wildlife in Madagascar is indigenous to the country. And they already are acting in quite a sustainable way without even knowing it. But now, starting cruise tourism, there is a risk to damage it. So we are getting involved with that. We're trying to connect them to the World Wildlife Fund and making sure that any interactions with animals is done in the right way. And, they are responding in a very positive way. And I must say, I was very impressed with the islands. At the moment, the Seychelles, for sustainability reasons, is allowing only ships of 300 passengers. And that will be extended later because of the concern of sustainability. And they're building a new port in order to avoid the congestion. So there's lots of initiatives going on. And the more I think Indonesia, is another important place from Bali and beyond. New itineraries can be built. Because I said at the beginning, there's plenty of ports around the world. There's plenty of room for all the ships. We just need to make sure that we have the right ships in the right port and it's all managed in a sustainable way.
Well, thank you for that. Were there anything you wanted to add to that, Sylvia or Lyndon? Because I was about to go to questions and answers unless there was anything else you wanted to.
The only thing that strikes me, and next time you go on that 30 by 30 tour, I want to go. My team, we want to go with you.
Well,
because that's where the rubber meets the road, right? You know,
Yes.
talking to all these folks and making sure that we can partner on sustainable development.
all on ferries, I might say.
I'll paddleboard. Okay.
You'll be welcome.
No
You'll be welcome.
emissions.
He already told me it's some of the best hiking in the world and cycling over there. I mean, it sounds really
Okay.
good dream.
I'm there. The only thing that strikes me about there are so many ports all over the world and private destinations and everything. It's really the need to be sensitive to the fact that these are many of these ports are emerging economies,
Exactly.
right? And so to get there, you know, we need to burn a lot of fuel, and to stay there, we also need to burn fuel. So we want to be, I think we need to be mindful as we front load our plans and our investments that we design for the future and ensure that we can partner with those local economies to make sure that, okay, what are they doing to move to a renewable energy future, and how we can be a part of that and integrate that into our operations.
I agree wholeheartedly. And in terms of deployment, you know, in Dubai, we realized a lot of ships were relying on Singapore only for the dry dock. So we now have dry dock facility in Singapore. So it means that if you have a winter season in Dubai, you could potentially have a summer season in the Vanilla Islands, you know, and it's close by. So we have to think outside the box like that and make sure that we, you know, get all the regions to talk together. But that is happening now, and that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Good. I'm hoping we're kind of retooling the Caribbean too, a little closer to home, maybe something like that. As we're thinking about new deployment.
Yes.
I think COVID actually did a little bit of that. Really, I saw more ships going out of Barbados and St. Martin that didn't go out of those ports before. So we're spreading it around a little bit more, getting a little further afield. Yeah, no, that's good. We have a few more minutes left, and I thought I would open it up to any questions that you might have. I have a few other things to discuss here, but I didn't want to take away any questions that might be coming from you all. Anyone? Oh, thank you.
Oh, my question is, what are you doing to bring the crew along? Because understanding that your crew are from all over around the world may not be as educated in the whys and the wherefores of why we should be sustainable. And I'm thinking about, you know, a guest comes on board and they're angry because they can't get a plastic straw. You know, I've been I've been dealing with guests for a long time, so I know they have these. So are you educating the crew members so that they can give a respectful answer as to why Mr. Cruise guest, you can't get a plastic straw, rather than having the here I am with my plastic straw, rather than having the crew member say, oh, yeah, I know, that's such a pain, you know. So how are you bringing the crew along?
I can see Lyndon smiling. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. Because we've been working really hard on getting rid of, you know, all the plastics and either replacing them with a non-plastic alternative or completely eliminating a lot of plastic items. And you know, really proud of our procurement team for working so hard on that. But you're right. I mean, we've had to work hard to make sure our crew are brought along on that journey with us. You know, I mean, for a long time, they've been very aware of the need for waste management, because it's such a key aspect on the ship to make sure it gets done properly and effectively, because we have to do it. We have a limited amount of space. You know, it's really important that we work to a very strict protocol. We have an environmental compliance officer on every ship, and they look after whole teams of people who are responsible for this. And it's their job also, as part of that, to educate the crew. So you're right. I mean, it's something that we need to keep on top of, that we need to make sure we engage the crew, that we engage them in a way that is fun and kind of helpful, and make sure that they support us. And you're right. I mean, give positive answers to this, not say, yes, isn't this an inconvenience, but say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. So yeah. I mean, that's fundamental for us.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, we have environmental officers and all of their team on each and every ship. And so there is a team there that is constantly overseeing our awareness and our operationalization of environmental stewardship and things like what Sherry's mentioning. Our crew is from all over the world, but they also share the same passion that we do for environmental stewardship. And my colleagues are going to have to help me with the lingo on this. But what's our program, SAIL, which is the foundation of our? It's on every ship. Save the Waves. So Save the Waves everywhere. You know, I just did a tour on one of our ships, and everywhere you turn, there's Save the Waves. So it's, you know, no pollution, none at all, not tolerated. Reuse, recycle, continuous improvement, and going above and beyond compliance. So embedding that and constantly communicating those messages and setting the example and showing them how that's operationalized through our environmental officers and their staff is a great way to help our crew understand our mission.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask the organizers here, do we have one more minute? Are we okay with that? Okay. I would just like, if there's no other questions, I would like to, oh, one more, sorry. Could we, microphone down there? Yes. The gentleman in the red, I think, put his hand up first. Okay. Sorry.
Can we bring out on the ships there more stainless steel straight straws? Would that be an improvement as over to the plastic straws?
Well, we've actually eliminated our plastic straws, but we do have an alternative non-plastic straw instead. I think that probably is the most effective way to go. I think the, you know, I mean, stainless steel is a potential option, but, you know, we have a lot of people on board, and, you know, the cleaning of stainless steel straws would be quite a hefty process. So I think we'd probably have to do some assessment to look at, you know, that kind of cleaning requirement versus having these non-plastic straws, you know. So I mean, I think in your home, I think a metal straw is a great alternative, because, you know, you don't need the numbers that you would need on a large ship.
Well, I've seen on ships that I have been on bamboo alternatives. I've seen agave, which is a really popular you know, material, and that's all sustainable. And it doesn't hurt your teeth. I think that would be my only issue with stainless steel. You got to be careful when you put that near your teeth.
Yeah, that could be a great toy for little BB guns for kids. I don't know.
But anyway, good alternatives is to try to find something. You know, keep looking is really good. And did you still have a question? Okay.
At least that's the way, you know, I don't know if you did that in grade school. We always played BB guns with our straw.
Yeah.
Hi, Trevor Small. Just wondering, with such a monumental task at hand, how do you prioritize your initiatives?
You know, you look at your footprint and where your most probable and your highest impacts are with respect to social impacts as well as environmental impacts, and you make very, very extensive and deep assessments of the way you build your ships, the way you deploy your ships, where you deploy your ships to, the communities that you interact with. It's a huge footprint, but you need to focus on the right issues. The ones are, like I said, the highest impact, highest probability, and design your operations, front load your operations with all the considerations that you need to address in order to operate sustainably. When I first started in the area of sustainability, professionals in my area were brought in when impact assessments were done, and it was basically too late, because it was an assessment of the impact, and then we had to determine, okay, how do we prevent that, mitigate that, or remediate that? We're now participating in business strategies and planning at the outset of any development project, so designing for sustainability.
And Lyndon, I think you and I talked about before too, is this is a journey, right? This is not like we're going to fix everything overnight all at once. But if we put attention on every single one of them in all of our daily meetings and make sure that sustainability is part of the conversation, then it becomes a natural part of the evolution, and everything starts to get changed in little increments to make one big change. But we can't do it all together all at once. I think it's just put the attention on it, and let's make sure that we do the right thing, that we are stewards of our environment, and that we operate out of that care for the planet that we live on, and everything that we touch and do is with that in mind. So, last word, what would be your vision of the future, just in a word or two, if you could choose? Like, what would you think that the vision is?
Asking me?
Yep, anyone, jump in, dive in.
I think it goes to the point that you're making on how the recreational boating and the impacts of recreational boating, it's going to take awareness and conscientiousness and action from each and every one of us to achieve what we need to achieve. This morning in the New York Times, there was an article on over-tourism. And the author of the article said, we always plan to go everywhere, do everything, and get as much. And we don't really think about, how we're traveling. And we need to think about that. And we need to ask ourselves, yes, we want to think about what kind of experience we want, but we also need to think about what kind of impact we're causing.
Thank you.
Well, for myself, if you look online at the etymology of the word sustainability, you will see it comes from a German word that says sustain yield. So what I want to do is yield as much influence as I can around the world and make some beacons of hope, and lighthouse examples of how to do things, which I think will have the greatest influence. So I've chosen certain regions like Vanilla Islands, as mentioned earlier, and Greece, and then make them best practices so that other regions of the world can look at that. So for me, it's about creating best practices, collaborating, and sharing the knowledge and showing the way forward and demonstrating it rather than talking about it.
Thank you. Last words, Lyndon?
Resilience. I think the pandemic has taught us what a resilient industry we are. I'm absolutely flabbergasted when I look at the efforts that were made in terms of the repatriation of the crew, in terms of now getting them back to the ships, to getting the ships running with all the challenges that we've faced. I think if we can do that, we can do anything.
Great, thanks. And I'll just close with a quote from Winston Churchill that I love, which is, when you're going through hell, keep going. Let's all keep going, keep improving. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.